All right. So yeah, Visual Studio is at 2026. Now this is a relatively new version. Um, and we obviously we have 2022 on the computers here, and we actually only had 2022 available last semester. So what my recommendation is this is that let's let's go there. Got it. So um, Visual Studio download. And again, you don't want Visual Studio Code. You want Visual Studio. Okay. So we don't want this one. We want Visual Studio. Visual Studio Community. That's the free one. Okay. So, and we want the free download, not the free trial, the free download. Okay. And so you can watch these videos if you like. No need to. Um, but these are all the different things you can do with Visual Studio. Okay. So free Visual Studio. We want the community. Okay. And so we go to free download. I'm not going to be able to run it on here, but you're only going to be able to run. How you doing? You're only going to be able to run the one for 2026. That's fine. Make sure though you select .NET 8.0.
Okay, I did see that already. Yeah, I checked that one.
Okay. So make sure you then we'll be all talking. I'm assuming Visual Studio will be transparent between 2022 and 2026. The only way I'll be able to test it out, I'll have to actually load it on my computer back in my office. So I'll have to do that. Okay. And I might do that just to make sure that you guys can use it. Okay. Because you are going to have to use Visual Studio 2022 for the test. Because I don't think they'll be uploading 2026 anytime soon.
Is it like a big difference? Is it like a big difference between the two or not?
No, it's an upgrade. Everything you can do in 2022, you'll be able to do in 2026.
Just making sure like it wouldn't like affect us like while we're taking the test stuff because like we're used to playing the 2026.
Yeah, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to check it out, and I'll make sure that it works for both. Okay. So I will officially load 2026 on my computer back at the church. Okay. All right. And I'll make sure the code will work in both.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, if it doesn't, for whatever reason, we'll figure that out. Okay.
Show me NET 8.0 for runtime and WebAssembly. You want me to choose both?
Uh, do NET 8.0. What was the other?
They're both 8.0, but one says runtime for long-term support, and the other one says WebAssembly build tools.
Um, let me get back with you on that. Let me see. Here, bring your computer over here. Let me see if I can do that.
Showing these two right here.
Um, do the long term support one, runtime long term support.
So just remove that one.
Yeah, you can remove that one. We're not going to need any WebAssembly build tools. Okay. All right. What's up, Jeremiah? Not a problem.
hold on to something to talk to you after the class. I don't want to waste time.
Okay. All right. So, what I want you to do is I want you to bring up chapters 2 and 3, the PDF file for the lecture notes. Okay. And I've already brought that up. And so we're going to get going. All right. So, as you may or may not know, you're going to be doing a graphical user interface. What's up, Jeremiah?
I'm trying to turn this computer on, but it's not working.
Okay, then go to that one over there. Try that one. That one's actually closer to the screen anyway. So graphical user interface design guidelines. Okay, so whenever you organize your graphical user interface, you want to make sure that it either flows vertically up and down or horizontally left to right. Okay, so one or the other. What you don't want is you don't want to be going from this field to this field to that field. They need to flow in an order, including your buttons. Okay? So either moving, so you start in the upper left corner and you either go sideways from left to right or up and down. Okay? All right. And this is two different ways to design the same screen. Okay. So this one would move up and down, and it would move to these buttons as well. Now, things that are output only, you don't land on those fields. Okay. So you shouldn't be able to user tab through those fields. All right. Any questions about that? And by the way, I am recording this, so you will be able to watch this later. All right. So group related controls together. So you may have a container control, such as a group box control, and you are able to put things into a group box. So the order information is in a group. Okay. Usually we'll put even buttons in groups. Okay. Let's go ahead and let's bring up a practice form for ourselves. Okay. So I've already brought up Visual Studio 2022, and I'm going to create a new project. Okay. So I'm going to create a new project. And again, I always like to select my filters here. We're in C#. We're going to be using a Windows. Jeremiah, you can't bother people like that. Make this, ask me if you have a question, okay? All right. And then we are going to use a desktop application. And in our case, we're going to make a Windows Forms app, which is right here. And make sure you use it with .NET, not .NET Framework. And select it, say next. And we're going to put this somewhere. And remember, we set up a place to hold all of our stuff. If I go down, in my case, it's 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 going to be under H, and I put it under CIS-130 student, and I'm going to put it in practice because we're just practicing right now. And so we're going to select that folder, and we could call this whatever we want to do. We'll just call it practice 0203. Okay.
Question. So you want us to save these files in that SI?
You probably should.
Yeah.
This is going to make your life a lot easier.
Yeah. So basically, it's just so we can find these files.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. And then on a test, when you're taking a test and you lose everything, I'll be able to find it.
oh.
All right. All right. And then again, we want to use .NET 8.0, long-term support. So Ali, you see that right here, right?
Yeah,
You see how this is .NET 8.0 long-term support?
right, yeah.
So
Also forced me to download
the web app, the web stuff.
no, the 0.10 as well.
Okay. All right.
Or both at the same time, 8 and 10.
Okay. So it forced you to download 10, huh?
Yeah.
All right. And I'll show you this. I'll show everybody this shortly, how you can make sure it's a .NET 8.0. Because if 10 won't work on here if you notice that. So I'm going to do a create. And it's doing its stuff. I'm not worried about updating. And it creates form 1 for us. Okay. It's automatically going to create the first form for you. Okay. Now, if I wanted to change my project to .NET 8.0, I got to go down to project and go down to the project names properties. And right here is where you switch it, the target framework. Okay. All right. And then you would have to jump out or save it and then jump out and jump back in. Okay. Now, so let's start off. Let's rename our form. Okay. And I don't know. Let's call it. Now remember, when you rename your form, you want to be out of your form. Okay. We talked about this last week. So I'm going to close form 1. And I don't need this. And then I'm going to do a rename right here in my Solution Explorer. And we're going to do a rename. And let's say we'll just call it my form. MYFORM. Okay. And hit enter. It changes everything below it. That's why you want to be out of it. And you just say yes. So everything that was referencing form 1, we're going to change it to my form. All right. And just say yes. All right. So let's go ahead and bring up this form. Do that by double clicking. And remember, I always like to have 2 additional windows open. I like to have my properties windows open. So I'm going to open my properties window under view and puts it right there. And I also like to have my toolbox open. Okay. And view toolbox. And I like to pin it so I can see the whole form. All you got to do is click the pin right here. All right. I'm good. Yes.
Then I assume you go on these property managers,
Say what?
front of my properties window.
It's under view and it's at the bottom. Now, sometimes you're going to come up and your toolbox won't be there. And that's a problem. So, what I would do in this case is I would actually come out of Visual Studio and then go back in.
Me close it in.
And then we're going to bring up Visual Studio. And we'll bring up the one that we are just currently using. Okay. And we could, whenever you get an error like this, we can see it. Let's just try bringing it back up. Interesting. And it's because I renamed it that we're getting a problem. But let's try it again, and we'll try to fix whatever was going on. Microsoft is always famous for the problems that you experience. Okay? So don't let that throw you off.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Is my table supposed to show all window forms, common controls, containers, menu, toolbox, stuff like that?
You got to talk louder.
I was saying, is my window, I mean, my toolbox supposed to show all window forms, data, components, stuff like that?
No. So your toolbox should be on this side. It should be on the left side of your. All right. So we're all set. All of our controls are going to be. Jeremiah, just try to follow along, and if we'll talk later. Okay. So now I'm all set. I have everything open that I need open. And like I said, sometimes you're going to have issues. All right. So let's say I wanted to make a small form. Okay. Let's what we would do is Jeremiah, make sure you watch the board, okay? Okay. So if I wanted to drag a text box over here, so I would go and find a text box, and I would drag it here. Okay, and there's my first text box. Okay, let's say this text box I want it to be, I wanted to be my name. Okay, so what I would do is I would go over to where my text box is, and you see how you have this A through Z. I always like to use A through Z, so list my controls in alphabetical, all the properties for my controls in alphabetical order. Okay, and so let's go ahead and rename it. So we select it. And let's go alphabetical order. And we got to go up top for the name. And what I'm going to suggest to you is that all your text boxes are TXT and then whatever you want to name it. Okay, so in this case, it's going to be TXT name. All right. Now, the next thing you want to do is that the user's not going to know that this is for your name, so you have to bring a label over. And so we're going to bring a label over, and we're going to call it LBL name. Now, you don't have to call it that, but that will work. And then we're going to name this name. So we got to go down to the text where it says label 1, and we're going to make it capital NAME, and usually we use colon. Okay, that's kind of a standard. Okay, and let's say we wanted to put two more things on our spread on our form. Okay, so let's once again, we can either copy this, and sometimes it's good to copy it because it'll be the same size. Okay, if you want all your everything to be the same size. We don't care this time because we're going to actually make this longer for a name. And let's drag another two text box over here. And we don't have to really worry about lining them up. But in this case, let's call this TXT quantity. And I'll explain why shortly. Okay. And of course, we have to bring a label over here. And yes, anybody know what we're going to call this? We're going to call it LBL quantity. Okay. All right. And of course, we want to name it quantity. So let's go down to text and we'll call it quantity. And put the colon in. All right. And then we're going to do one more and we're going to call that price. So I'll do that real fast because I know I'm boring you guys. Am I boring you? Not yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, good. All right, so we're going to name that TXT price. And then we're going to drag a, here, we'll copy this label in this case. Control C, Control V, and then we can drag that on over. Kind of helps you to line it up. We're good with that. And we'll call this LBL for the label price. And then we got to go down and change the actual text of this to price. Okay. All right. So we can test this out. By the way, let's name this form. We're going to call it order form. So if we click right here and we have the form selected, not the controls, but the form, we can change this, the title of this, and we'll call it order form. Okay, and it changes the title right up here. Okay, so we change the property of the form. Now, a few things we want to do is, first thing is we want our text boxes to be lined up. So whatever one you're good with, you start there. So you click there, and then you hold down the shift and the shift. And what you can do is you can go over to here, say format, and you can align the lefts. Okay. And while we're here, we can also we can make them the same size. Okay, but we don't really want them to be the same size. And then we can make vertical spacing. We can make it equal, and then it centers. It makes it equal. And by the way, this is a lot easier to read than if you had them all over the page. Now, the other thing we might want to do is we might want to align these. So let's align this time. Let's go back to format, align. This time we're going to align. Oops. Wait, try this again. Oops. Well, one of the ways I can do is I can just highlight all these, and I could say format, align. This time let's align the rights. Okay, so that's one way to do that. And then if you want, you can always drag it, make sure we can align the tops right here with the corresponding text box. And we're good. And you got yourself a pretty form there. Now, if we wanted to test this, we could go right here to the run button or the execute button and execute it. And there it is. And one of the things that we would want to do is we would want to make sure that it's going in this vertical way up and down. And we're good with that. Notice how it's going up and down. The other thing to notice on your form is it's not stopping at the labels. We don't want it to stop at the labels. We only want it to stop at the text boxes. So we can stop this at this point. All right. So we did a lot of stuff. Let's go back to our notes. Let's see. So we're going to talk about grouping shortly. Use a label to identify each text box, which we did. Again, the label text should be 1 to 3 words and appear on one line. Left align the text, which we did. Enter the label text using capitalization and colon, which I believe we did, right? We did all that. All right. Guideline 4, display meaningful captions on the face of each button. Okay, we're going to have to put some buttons in. The caption should indicate the action of the button will perform. And place a caption on one line. Okay, each button in a group should be stacked vertically, should have the same height and width. Each button positioned horizontally should have the same height. The most common used buttons is typically placed first in the group. All right. So let's go ahead and put 2 buttons on our form. Now, the buttons are used, they're used to really do some type of action. Okay. So when the user clicks a button, some action should be performed. So let's go ahead and drag a button on. Okay. So we drag a button on, and it's called button 1. Okay. So let's say our first button is to calculate. Okay. So again, we want to use, when we name it, we want to call it BTN for button. And then let's say calculate. Okay. And we're going to go down here and, we got to click the button, and we are going to, we're going to name the text something different. Okay, so let's call it calculate. Now, you don't need a colon for your buttons, okay? But there is something special here. So we can use the ampersand sign to automatically take us there when we hold down the Alt key. So we're going to use C to automatically take us there. And so we put the ampersand right before the first C. And we hit enter. And in our case, it is right there. Okay. Now, what I like to do is I like to keep my buttons the same size. So again, you take your longest button and you copy it. So we're going to copy this, and then we're going to paste it. Okay. And again, we want to make sure it lines up. And we can line these up at a different time too. And so let's select this. And this will be our exit button. So BTN exit. Okay. But we also have to change the name, and we're going to type in E, and then we're going to use, instead of using E, we're going to use the X for exiting the program. And we're going lowercase XIT. All right. Now, we can create a group box and put these in here. And there's some advantages to doing that, okay? And we'll see that. So I put them in a group box. And let's make sure that these are aligned properly. Go to Format, Align. We're going to align tops. And they are. Okay. And we could call this, the group box with this. Again, you don't really have to rename these things that you're not going to really use. But if we wanted to, we could call it GRP buttons. Okay. All right. And
I have a quick question.
yes.
For example, like a calculate button, how would we code that to actually calculate?
Good question. We'll get to that. Okay. All right. So,
Professor? Sorry.
yeah.
I lost that last one. How did you do the group buttons again?
So there's a group control right here. Right there. So I just dragged it, and then when I dragged it, I just had to make sure that it's covering what I want it to cover. Okay. In this case, I don't really want this, but that's what you would do. Okay. So that's how you can put that in a group. All right. And again, if we, let's see what so we positioned our buttons correctly. We aligned the borders of our controls to minimize the number of different margins. Um, and again, you could put graphics out there, but use them sparingly. Yes.
What was the name that you put for the group button? Was it just
I just called it GRP buttons. Yeah. And you don't, because we're never going to use the name here, you don't really have to worry about that. Okay. Now, yeah, and what we're trying to do is we're trying to not confuse the user. Actually, yeah. So if this group buttons won't show up. So, but if you wanted to, you could actually get rid of this text, and then it wouldn't even be there. Okay. Now, if we wanted to change the fonts of all the text boxes, we could. Let's say we wanted to change these three. Let's even change these two. Okay. And so what we're going to see is we're going to see the common controls that we could change. And in our case, the font is common with all of these. In fact, we could even select these if we wanted to. And we could change everything from 9 point to, let's say, 11 point. And everything worked fine except this. So what I would do here is I would make this a little bit longer for calculate. Okay. It's still in the group box. And then I would select the exit button and go to format and make the same size. Just like that. Okay.
Professor,
So
sorry.
yes.
I have one more question. Sorry. When I did my group box, it hid my buttons. Like they're not visible now when I put my group
Oh,
box down.
okay. So what you can do in that case, you can click on your group box, okay, and send back.
Perfect. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So we're happy with our form. And now, as far as colors, I suggest using the colors that are defaulted to you. So here's what you don't want to do. You don't want to do something like this. Okay. Uh, let's select our form, or let's just select the text boxes here. Okay, and you go and you change, let's say rose gold is your favorite color. Okay, and I just threw that out there. I don't know. But let's say we wanted to change our background color to rose gold. Okay, instead of leaving that window. Okay, so you might go down to here. Unfortunately, Windows only gives you a few things, but you want to make it easy on your eye. So I wouldn't change it to this. Okay. because let's watch what happens. And this is a bad example. Okay. Literally, you can't see what's going on here. Okay, because they're the same color. But let's change it to something even a little bit more suitable. Let's say we change it to dark gray. Okay. And you run your program. See how hard it is to see? So if I type my name in there, it's not easy to see. So you don't want to mess too much with the colors. Okay. But while we're here, let's test this out. Let's do a. So far, everything is in order. Okay. So we're good. And we'll change this back to Windows white. All right. So let's go ahead and change that back. There we go. All right. So just follow those rules. You should be good. All right. Let's take a look at, go back to our handout. So this is a pretty form. This works well. Okay. Now, let's take a look at this form right here. Okay. What are some issues with this form as you see them? Yeah, I don't really like the colors. Colors are a little bit annoying to me. I think I think there's also that this form is too busy. There's too much going on with this form. So I don't like how busy it is. You might actually just make the form larger. I don't like the purple right there. It's kind of out of place. The font sizes, maybe they could be a little bit larger. Again, you'd have to make the form larger. Now these boxes right here are actually labels. So you got two different purposes for labels. One purpose is obviously to describe the text that's going to be put in. And as we notice here, there's no colons here, which I don't like. But the other reason you might use a label is for output. But when you use it for output, make sure you don't select the 3D effect. You would probably use fix single for labels. We don't like the 3D effect for labels that are going to show output. Okay. But to me, this form is a little bit too busy for my liking. So let's go down to here. So setting the border style property of the text box or label. Keep the border style property of the text box to its default setting of fixed 3D. Keep the border style of the captions for the text boxes to the default, and that is done. Set the border style to labels that are going to display output to fixed single. And avoid setting labels border style to fixed 3D since it will not be editable by the user. And another thing is you don't want the user to be able to change your label. So the auto size property should be set to false for labels that are going to display output. What do I mean by display output? Let's take a look at that. So let's say I wanted to put what the total is for my order. So let's drag a label out here for that. Okay. And we'll call that LBL total. Okay. So we'll leave it like that. And we'll have a default text of nothing. Okay. So it's kind of transparent at this point. You can't see it, but it's still there. I just have to click on it. Let me change it back. Okay. So let's change the border style on this. Remember, if it's going to be a label that's going to show output, we're going to change the border style. We're going to give it a border style, but it's going to be fixed single, not fixed 3D. Okay. Now we can change the text of this to be nothing. And we'll be able to see it. And we want to change the auto size. Let's first make it as big as price. I'm going to select that. Then we select that. And format, make the same width, the same size. Oops, I was unable to do that. Let's another way we can change the size. First, let's change the auto size of this. So I select it, go to auto size, make that false. Okay. Now let's try make it the same size as this. And format, same width. I think it already is. And let's do format, make the same height. There we go. And we can drag this, again, line this up. And one of the things I would do at this point, now we can drag this whole group box down, okay? And notice how it drags it all down together. But let's align these to be the same spacing, format, make align, vertical spacing, make equal. All right. And it looks like these are fine. All right. But now let's say we wanted to indicate what this is. So what we can do is we can copy this and we can paste this. And we're going, let's make sure that these are aligning correct. All right. And we can change this to be total price. Okay. And again, if we want to align these appropriately, we can go to Format, Align the Rights. There we go. All right. So we've successfully designed our form. I'm pretty happy with it. Now, as we look at assigning access keys, we've already done that with the calculate and the access by putting the ampersand in front of the access key we want to be able to do. Okay. And we'll play with that a little bit. Um, and again, we use X here because that's more appropriate. Now, in general, you probably do want to assign everything an access key. Okay. All right. So let's run our form. And there it is. Now let's tab and let's see what happens. I'm happy with what's going on. Now, if I do, even though you don't see the C underlined here, if I do an Alt C, it's going to go there. Alt C. Oh, wait, it's not. Well, that's because there's probably nothing going on. Let's try an Alt X. Huh, interesting. That's because we don't have any code behind at this point. All right. But let's come back to that. And let's talk a little bit about the toe chart. Okay. And you're going to have to do this on your first assignment. Okay. I'm going to want you to do a toe chart for us. All right. So, what is a toe chart? It stands for task, object, event. Okay. So, you're going to have three things going on. And so, a task is to, one of the tasks is input. And input is to get data. Okay. So, in our case of our form, we have three things that get input. Okay. Let me see if I have a toe chart I can bring up too. Go back. Oh, wait. Mm-hmm. Looks like I don't have one with me. Interesting. Let's bring up an old one. Okay. So our user inputs would be, God bless you, would be name. So TXT name, TXT quantity, and TXT price. And in our toll chart, we would explain what we are looking for in each of these. So get the user name, get the user quantity ordered, get the user quantity paid price. Okay, and it would be TXT name, TXT quantity, and TXT price. Now, the event procedure are actions that actually happen when it's carried out. For the most part, only your user commands will have event procedure. Okay, but in some cases, input could, for example, if you had an event like data changes, it might run an event. Okay. Output is strictly that. What are your outputs? And in our case, we only have one output, which is total price. Okay. And so in this, it would be the object name would be LBL total. And again, there would be no event procedure for that. Now, user commands are different. So we actually have two buttons that are going to do user commands, and we'll play around with those in a little bit. But you may have here, this would be the action would be to exit the program, and calculate would be to calculate the quantity and price and produce the total price. Okay. And so as we look at that, these would have what's going to happen when we do calculate. It's going to multiply the price by the quantity. Okay. It's going to be LBL total. And it'll happen on BTN calculate, and it will run BTN calculate on click. Okay. And exit would exit program. The object would be BTN exit, and the event would be it would be BTN exit underscore click. All right. So let's go down to here, and I try to explain that a little bit better. So a label is used to display headings, which are simply captions, which are simply headings. It's also good control to display output. A text box is used for data entry, such as customer name or quantity purchased. A common mistake a developer might use will be to use a text box to calculate results, such as invoice total. So we would not want to use a text box that's supposed to be for output only. Okay. And again, whenever we put a text box, we typically want to put an associated label with that. The last control that we use is the button. And for example, it could be calculate total, print the order, exit the application, clear the order. And whenever we have a button, we're going to probably have code behind that runs. Here are some names that you may want to use. Labels, text boxes, buttons, picture box, PIC, combo list box, CBO, a list box, LST, and a radio button, RDO gender. Okay. So if we use this, could be something that we can do. I'll probably make a video on this to correctly fill out this tow chart. Okay, so I will show you what I did with that. And I'll make that a video that you'll be able to utilize. All right, events. So these buttons that we have used and the other controls, they will raise an event. Okay. So whenever we click a button, we're going to do an event. And the event will run code. This is where you're going to do your C# programming. Okay. For example, the exit button you might use that to close the form. Okay, so let's go ahead and program that while we're here. Okay. Now, you could go in and look at all the code like that, but there is an easier way. Let's say I wanted to exit the program when I click this button. I can double click here, and it actually creates this BTN exit on click for us. So it actually creates that, and there's two parameters that are sent, and we'll talk more and more about that. But for right now, if you double click a control, it's going to create a method for that button. Okay, and that's what we just did. And then we can write our code. And a common way to do this is say this means the form that you are in, and IntelliSync will try to figure out what you want to do, and there we wrote our code. Okay. And again, we can do the same thing for calculate. And it creates code for that. Right now, I'm going to put in a message box. Now, let's do this. Let's change the label to something. And we'll change the label to our total label. We'll make it .text. And let's just make it a weird number. We'll just say 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? We'll just do that for right now. Now, if we go back to our form, and we don't have to go back to our form to run it, but let's go ahead and run this. Notice how total price is nothing. Okay? If I do an Alt-C, let's watch what happens. It changes that to 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I do an Alt-X, it exits the program. So we actually ran the code that we wanted to. Okay. So and if we go back, at our code, our view, the code behind, um, we notice that we've done what we wanted to do. All right. And again, if we looked at our tow chart, the event column for both those buttons would now be filled in with this name. One for the exit, another one for the calculate. Let's talk a little bit about, let's say we had to design an application for calculating invoices. This is how the tow chart would look. Okay. You would have, for input, you would have enter invoice subtotal. And as you enter the invoice subtotal, these would be all your outputs that you would display. Okay. Notice how there's 3 outputs. Okay. And there's 3 user commands: calculate, clear, and exit. And again, you would put the event, which is click. So if you clicked any of these, it would do an action. And so this would be your tow chart for this form. Okay. So study that, look at that. All right. We're not going to do the labs yet. We'll come back. I'll do that for you. Let me show you something about tab order. Okay. Now tab order, we've seen that this is working out. Right? So, to see the tab order, you can go view tab order. And as long as these are in the correct order, you're good with that. So, 0, we don't care about the labels. The labels don't matter because they don't have tab stops. Okay? But 0, 2, 4, and then look at this group 1. It knows that it's 8, but 8.6 and 8.7. So that's the correct order for us. Yes. So the 9 is the total price, but we won't be stopping there, and I'll show you why. Okay. By default, your labels don't have a tab stop. So let me take the view off. You got to go view, tab order, takes it off. If we look at, for example, price, the tab stop by default is true. But if we look at the total price, by default, the tab stop, there is no tab stop. Okay. You can't even, it doesn't even have a property for a tab stop. Okay. So that's why you don't have to worry about labels. Labels don't have a tab stop. Only buttons and text boxes and list boxes and other combo box, they have tab stops. Okay? That's why the tab index doesn't matter. All right? All right. So let's see where we are on our So we're not. I'll release the labs for you tomorrow. But let's go to topic number 4 on page 13. And I know this is a lot of stuff. Okay. So once you've done designing your user interface, you and of course you get approval by your end user, you're ready to start coding. Okay. So we've gone to our user. They like how this is designed. It looks pretty. Pretty is good. Okay. They like how it looks. Uh, Now you can start doing your coding. And as you've noticed, we've already started our coding. Okay. But let's talk a little bit about comments. Okay. I like comments. Okay. So make sure when you're writing your programs that you put comments in. So we can take a look at that. We'll go view and look at our code. Um, and there's two types of comments you can put in. One is called a block comment. Okay. And everything between these two things are a block comment. So you can say, um, you know, this method exits the program. Okay. And you might put in something about who did this, and let's say Brett Abdullah, and I made this change on I made this method on, let's say, what's today's date? The 20th or what? 21? 1/21/2026. Okay. So, you can put that's called a block comment. Um, Not totally necessary right here. Actually, this would go up here. Okay. And I do like spaces in between your methods for sure. So let's put a space there. And let's type in a line comment. Now you could put a line comment anywhere, and that's two slashes, and let's say um, uh, calculate totals. Okay. And you can even put a line comment right here. This is a test line. Okay. So whoever comes in and programs behind you knows what they're trying to do. So you can put that at the end of the line, or you can make it its own line. All right. So please do comment your program. All right. So let's go to all right. Let's go to page 14. Right. Clearing a text box, a label control, and setting focus to that control. Okay. So a text box can be used for input while a label can only be used for output. So you can clear these boxes by doing this or this. So for a text box, you can use the clear method, but for labels, you can't. So for a label, if we wanted to clear a label in code, we'd have to do something like this. Text, and we could make it equal to this. Okay, and that would clear out the text. Another way to clear it out is to use the string dot empty method. Okay, I'm pretty sure it needs. No, I guess it doesn't. No, you don't need to. It's this. This means that this is a property. Okay. All right. The last thing we're going to do today is we're going to. We are actually going to. We are going to actually calculate this out. Okay. So, all right. So if I wanted to calculate price times quantity, how would I do that? I would take TXT quantity times TXT price. Okay. And again, what we would make is we make LBL total equal that. Um, all right. Now, I can tell you that this will not work. Okay. Why? Because it is a string. Okay. So we have to do something called parse to convert this. And we're going to be using parse a lot. Okay. Um, well, it's actually string. Oop. Let me get rid of this. Oh. And this is why I let you use your notes. Okay. Because if I don't know how to do this, then how are you going to know what to do? So let's go ahead and take a look. Let's go to Google and we'll type in parse string in C sharp. And we can quickly look at that. See if we find what we're looking for. No. Oh, into parse. Got it. Let's try that. So, and we'll just do one at a time. And put that in the parentheses. Then we have to make this, we have to convert it back to string. All right. So we can test that out by putting something into quantity. Now it has to be an integer, otherwise it will blow up. So let's try it. So let's put 7 into quantity. And let's see if it changes it to 7. And it does. Now, watch what happens if I put a 77.7. It's going to blow up. All right. So we successfully have blown up our program. All right. So let's finish this off. Okay. Um, so what we got to do is times int dot parse. Okay. And this time we're going to put txt price to text. Okay. And then we have to change this back to a string. Let's see if this works. So if we run it, we'll put my name in. Let's say we bought 3 whatevers. Okay. We'll say we paid $10 for it. So if we click calc, it works. I should change this font to 11, but you get the picture. All right. Any questions? And I know we went through this fast. Yes, Aurora.
Yeah, sorry, Professor. I speak up a lot. I encountered an error from my pre-generated code from the designer one. Um, it was a issue, it says, with the name of my group box.
Do you want to? You can show us if you like.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Let me make it so you can show it. Let me stop this recording.